cold spell. I hate cold weather. But that's about it. If there's any questions from the board, once again, you get those packets, I'll try to read those also, but I get the agendas too. We'll try to read those before it comes, if you have any questions, hopefully we can do on the same
Can
page
you
here.
just mention how many calls there were like in this area? Do you have that? Just so
Fire calls,
to just to the group. I mean, if you don't, that's fine.
I'd have to look at, I don't have.
Everybody.
So, go ahead.
What were the conditions for the 3 fatal fires?
I will tell you this, as far as conditions of the victim, or,
What caused the fires?
I don't know. Most folks, I would say this anecdotally speaking, because I've seen over the years, several fatalities, victims, unfortunately. I will tell you, most of them don't have burn on them, or very little thermal insulin. Most of them die of smoke. It's the smoke, they just can't get out. Oftentimes, it's older folks too. They just can't get out fast enough. When we voice, I don't have guys up there, we talk about smoke alarms, they save lives. If they do smoke, or they're worried, but I've had folks with alarms going on, but most of the time, it's smoke.
Anybody else from the DAB? Any questions from the public?
Great.
Awesome. Thank
Covered
you
it
so
all
much.
then.
Thank you so much.
You.
Wichita Police Department.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lori Kimry, and I work out of Patrol West. I am the community policing officer for beats 11 and 19. So 11 is contained in your district. I brought a couple of stats with me. It's like mostly, I'm not really sure what people were looking for with stats. So I brought year to date and like week to week comparisons. But year to date, almost everything's down. We had a 100% increase in ag assaults, but that means we had one more than last year. So it sounds like a lot, but it's statistics, so one more could make it increase 100% or decrease. So it's like almost everything's down compared on 11, 12, 14 and 15, which all are in district 6. I kind of wanted to touch base on these statistics. These are on reported dates, not accrued dates. So like last week we had a 600% increase in rapes, which sounds like a horrible amount. But we had 5 more than the one we had before. And almost all of those were reported 6 years later. So they actually occurred 6 years ago. So they're kind of, I don't really depend on these stats a whole lot, but if you have questions about them, I'd be happy to explain them. I kind of want to go over mostly some of the projects we've been working on. I know the big thing is the 3300 block of West 2nd, the car lot over there. We did remove 8 vehicles from the private property and 3 from the street on the 18th. There are a few more back, but they are licensed and titled and valid, but we're keeping up. We drive by there every day to make sure there's nothing, building back up over there, and especially in the street. Riverside Hospital, I know that since it's been shut down, we've had some problems with vagrancy over there and people breaking in and living there. The owner has now signed a trespass affidavit with us and nobody is allowed to be in there. So we are checking it daily to make sure nobody is in there. So I'm hoping there's a new owner that's going to take it over. I think there's some talks of different opportunities for that building. So hopefully it won't be left unoccupied for very long. Also, the 21st and Amadon, the new bridge, we've had a couple of homeless camps under there that people have complained about. They have been posted and cleaned up as of, we went back out there today and everybody's gone. So we'll keep up with that and make sure that the area's kind of clean. So, yes, sir.
What's the process when you go to a camp?
So,
So if there are people there, what happens? If there aren't people there, but there are things still there, what
so it
happens?
depends on if it's private property or public property. If it's private property, the business owner can say, I want it gone right now, and they can trespass them off the property, so we have to remove them immediately. If it's a public property, we post it, we give them a 72-hour notice to say, hey, you need to clean your stuff out of here, we'll come back. And it's usually a little bit longer than that, but if they haven't removed all their stuff, then we have, I guess, the right to remove it for them. But we do give them a post big green notice that says you have until this date to remove your property. We don't just go throw it away.
You also give them alternatives?
Oh yeah, we have all kinds of resources here. We have the hot team that comes out with us, and we have options and opportunities and apartments and job opportunities and, you know, clinics and all kinds of stuff. It's just whether or not they wanna
So how aggressive are you guys when you go out?
aggressive.
Aggressive, yeah.
Like, I'm not like gonna force anybody to do anything,
Okay.
you know, but if we say, hey, do you want help with anything? Here's the resources, we can get you started, we can get the ball rolling, all that stuff. But people are like, I don't want any of your help, then okay. I mean, we're not gonna make you,
Right,
we're not gonna make anybody do something they don't wanna do. That's their right.
so what if they're still there 3 days later and don't wanna move? What do you do?
Well, we call the hot team to address that, the
Okay.
homeless outreach team. We don't force hands.
Okay.
But we have them, cause they're all, I guess, up on the criminal and
Good.
justice
Should be.
and
We all
all
should be.
the rights that people have. So if we have
All right.
something that, like that, we call them to come and
Okay.
address it. Good question.
Questions?
I know that the chief had sent out a message to us during that cold snap. The Broadway corridor team and the hot team, and I'm sure several others were working around the clock, and we went and they stopped like, I think he said 83 people like on the around the Broadway corridor, and not one person wanted help. They were willing to take me to shelter, or, which is devastating. It makes me ask a whole bunch of million more questions, but you know, they did stop several people to ask, you know, when it was sub-zero temps, they wanted help or show them all the resources, and they were not interested.
I mean, we had people for 21st of May that we were like, hey, you know, we have a safe place for you to go. It's warm. And like, well, I have a dog. Like, well, they have kennels. So we even had that opportunity for them if they had pets, you know, but they're like, no, I'd rather be out here. And I'm like, okay, yeah, so. But Officer Soda's gonna show you our community crime map. This is a good tool for you to look up cases in your own area if you want to. So he'll run through this real quick for you and give you questions. Feel free to ask. But thank you guys. And
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Officer Soto. I'm the CP officer for beat 4849. But basically, this is community crime map. It's ran through LexisNexis, and it's what we use, a different public version of what we use to run our statistics. So basically, you go to this website, community crime map. This mouse.
It's right
Yeah,
there.
you go to the website and it'll ask for your location or whatever. And then you can go over here, type in an address, or if you want to filter by maybe your neighborhood association that you live in, you can go ahead and do that. You can go to your agency layers, neighborhood association. You can pick a time frame that you want to do, maybe a week's worth. Then any events that you're curious about, maybe you're want to know about, let's see, burglaries. You apply that, and then it's broken down by your neighborhood association. So like if we wanted to do North Riverside, I can click there and it'll tell me, okay, this is North Riverside. There's none in there, but there's one right here, and it would be El Pueblo. And it tells you, hey, this is a burglary, that's the case number, this is the date. And this is, it doesn't give you the whole address, but it'll give you kind of the 100 blocks. So if you're curious about any kind of crime that's happening in your neighborhood or area. So
And it also updates like immediately, right?
I don't know.
Every morning.
Right, I don't know how often it updates, but it does, it's reported pretty quickly. So, anyone have any questions on this? No? Any questions for me?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Any next one?
Library report. Thank you. Bye guys, thank you.
Go Chiefs, go Chiefs. Our director of libraries is letting us wear our Chiefs gear all week, so I had to go out and buy some. I sent out a report. I know it was included in the packet. And if no one has any questions, I'll just make a couple of brief announcements. We have our bilingual preschool story time every Thursday morning at 10:30 for anybody who's got 3 to 5 year olds at home. The Academy Awards Short Film Festival is coming up in the first part of March. I really wanted to offer it here this year, but I wasn't able to, so I'm hoping for next year. But the big showings will be down at the main library.
Do you know how we can find out what the films are? I couldn't get
Have
it.
they been, have the nominations been made? Yes,
Oh.
no?
Maybe
Yes.
that's why I can't Google it. Okay, thank you.
I have, if I can, if I find it, I'll give the info to Anna and she can share that out. It looked like there was a lot on the agenda, so my goal is to be brief. Did anyone have any questions?
Do you know if they've changed the story on the story walk outside?
They changed the story on the story walk today.
Oh, what a great.
I'm glad you
awesome.
asked because, it got postponed a little bit by that awful
And it's still
weather.
half of it in Spanish.
It should be
Okay.
in both English and Spanish.
Perfect. Awesome.
And I've forgotten the name of the book, but I'll find that out too.
Cool. Any other questions? Great. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thanks.
Public Works.
My name is James Wagner. I'm the Special Projects Engineer for Engineering. Here to talk about some of our projects we got going on or in the works. So first and foremost is our Amadon Bridge here on Amadon, over the Big Ark River. Most of it's completed. We did a sidewalk connection on the northeast corner of the bridge to connect the bridge to the sidewalk just a little bit further north. There was a gap in there, so that's been done. And the artwork is supposed to be done here in the end of February, like some of the lighting and such along the edges of the bridge. So that's something I'm guessing it's gonna look really nice when it's done. Pavement preservation for this year is about ready to kick off. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, 24. We got a lot of different stuff going on in this area. I don't have anything in particular that gonna touch on. Maybe that 21st Street from Amadon to Arkansas is kind of from Quick Trip to the west there for that first half mile or so. It's getting really ratty since the people started detouring over to Waco from Amadon, but that's on the list. So that's the one I know of most. So anyway, anybody else have any questions about some of those? I can go back to that if we need to, but there's a lot of different programs involved with that every year. Design projects, Douglas, Seneca to Meridian, we've got that one under design. Starting to get ready to look at what we need for easements on that project. It's a federal project. So we get federal funds for that, so we have to have easements anytime we get and do any work on the sidewalks. Other than that, it got bumped to back a year because of a little delay we had on that. Delano Path, that's the one that goes basically from right there at Seneca down the old rail tracks down to Douglas and does quite a bit of little around the new transit center. Has quite a bit of improvements in that little area. It's gonna be pretty nice. The funding's been initiated and we're looking to bid that here shortly which I would call winter yet, but here in the next couple of months. Downtown restrooms, not as familiar with this, but there was one installed there at A. Price Woodard Memorial Park and at NASCAR Park. So that's kind of a nice little added bonus when you get to go down there and be able to have a place where you don't have to go and go get your car and leave downtown and that type of stuff. So anyway. 29th Street North, I-135 to Meade. That is coming along. It's got a lot of different items that work with that, so construction is still expected to be later on this year. That'll be a big improvement when that one gets done. Hoover, we're in the middle of right-of-way negotiations for that. That's been kind of a contentious project with a lot of property owners in the area from day one. We're still expecting to hopefully get that bid this year, as long as right-of-way negotiations don't drag out for ages. So that's really about the only thing holding that project up. 21st, Chisholm Creek to Bridge to Mosley. Again, right-of-way acquisitions are in progress for that. I think they're going along a little bit better than computers, so that one's expected to also bid here and start construction yet this year. The dog parks, K9 Rooster Dog Park, improvements to the K9 Rooster Dog Park, irrigation, concrete pads, and shelters are coming on that one. It was presented in January. If anybody has any questions on that, the schedule is attached there for how that's supposed to go. Expecting to complete that by the end of the year as well. 21st Street Corridor, Broadway to I-135. That's the Reconnecting Communities grant that we received. The draft agreement has been sent to DC for approval, so that's gonna get kicked off here before too long, and we'll see what comes out of that for all the rail crossings in that area. The other all district projects, the multimodal distribution or multimodal facility. Final plans are getting in and going through MABCD as well. And so permitting process starts up, and then as soon as that gets approved, then we should be able to open up for bids. So they're expecting spring of 2024, sorry. Dirt street programs, there's a bunch of them on the District 6 area. They're towards the bottom, next page of the list. There you are, there's about 8 or 9 of them there at the bottom. I don't know specifics on some of those, but some of these are under design already, and some of those designs are starting to come in. So some of these are going to start kicking off pretty shortly. And so we'll be getting rid of some of those. If anybody has any questions on how those are designed, they're very minimalistic compared to what we normally do, but that's so that we can get to more of them with the funds that we have. K96, I-135 to 21st Street, which is going to be a large project for the northeast side of town. There's another public open house out at that Northeast Wichita State campus at April 11th. And the North Junction is still under construction, but it seems to be going along pretty well. There's been a couple closures up there, but for the railroad didn't give anybody any notice of when they were going to let people do the work. So it's been kind of sporadic on how they shut some of those down. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be really more than willing to go over anything.
Question.
Yes.
235 and Zoo Boulevard, do you have any idea how long that project is gonna go?
At the bridge, that is a county project, so I don't know exactly how long it can go. I know they switched traffic a while back, and so that would mean, I would assume that probably half is complete. So what did it take them, about 2 to 3 months to get half? And it's probably not, that type of work, 6-month schedule's not uncommon. And that's just speculation. I don't know anything. I don't know the first thing about the project other than I've driven through it a couple times.
I'll find out for you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
You mentioned transit center.
Yes.
What's the update on breaking ground, getting that going?
So. Opening bids are expected to be in spring of 2024, so in the next few months.
That's
It has,
a 2-year project or a year and a half, 18 months?
I don't know exactly, I would assume that it's probably gonna take a good 16 to 18 months, at least, but it may be longer than that because some of the stuff that they're incorporating in there may have longer lead times. I know they're doing some innovative technologies, and it seems like some of those things that you order, there's like 12 to 15 month wait just to get those types of things in place, so give or take, I would assume that it's gonna be in that range. The building itself shouldn't take that long, and then we'll probably finish with some of the paving and stuff around it, so it's gonna be a pretty fast project, so. Which, let's go to him first and I'll get to you next. So that's how good.
On the CIP, could you explain those acronyms FTA and GO? Costing.
FTA is Federal Transit Authority. GO is Go Bonds here. Which is how we fund non-street projects mostly. It also, Go Bonds is how some of our other such like fire and police are bonded for funding. So, were there any other ones?
But are a lot of these projects heavily funded by federal government?
Some, we try, the city itself tries to go out and get as many grants as we possibly can get so that we, you know, usually we're at an 80 or 90% federal amount, so we have to match 10 to 20%. Sometimes it's 25, it varies depending on which grant you get. But usually there's a local match, but our dollars, you know, we can spend 200,000 to get $1 million worth of work done if it's 80-20. So that's how our federal funding works, mainly on street projects, but yeah, just about any. Yes, sir.
Last month, we heard about the design plans for the Rooster Dog Park, and it was brought up that there may be a need for a temporary release of methane gas from the landfill underneath of it. And given at least from what I heard, the not insignificant possibility that may happen, does the city have a process for notifying nearby residents if and when the methane will be released?
I'm assuming that they'll follow some sort of protocol to do that. I do not know what that protocol would be. Yeah, I mean, I know that generates methane on a regular basis and it's not captured, so it's releasing on a normal basis anyway.
Okay. I'm surprised that it can be in underneath like a foot of rubber instead of all just simmering down there for however long.
Waste generates methane,
Right.
and so that whole pile out there generates methane 100% of the time. So it just in small quantities that usually can't be utilized for much usefulness. So, yeah, but I do not know how they're going to manage that honestly, but I doubt if it would be a lot of concern, and I'm sure they'll have some sort of, if they have some sort of a release that they're generating, I'm sure they would probably do some sort of either a burn off or a filter or something like that, if there was any possibility of harm. That's what they do at the waste treatment facility in Burn. So it creates methane waste 100% of the time too, and they have a burn.
On the Dirt Streets program, do you know how many years out you plan for? Is it 10? And then is there a way to find out what's on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Share that with.
there's a website that I think that had all of those, right?
But I have a list that's specific to District 6. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I know the first 4 years are set up to be, is what I think around designated school areas. That's first come, or that's like the first identified area that they're trying to get to first.
Okay.
And so I know they have like a 4-step process to determine who gets what first.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are you also associated with the stormwater department?
It's Public Works, so
Okay. So this isn't a question, it's a real concern. Seems to be an increased violation of the floodway area by motorized vehicles, ATVs, Jeeps. I even saw Suburban coming out of there a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what you guys can do about that, but here's my concern. I've checked into this, and when I talked to the Corps of Engineers, there's a statute or a law out there after Katrina that says if we don't do everything we can to manage that resource and keep it in stable condition, should there be a breach, the Corps of Engineers is not responsible to fund or reconstruct it. And that concerns me.
yeah, they're gonna distance themselves as much as possible. That's
Yeah.
for sure. I know and understand kind of, I've done, I think, 5 projects on the levee system that we have around town. A lot of it happened after the Katrina. We had to go through and do a lot of work that a lot of people didn't care for on that, like removing trees within a certain distance of the levee itself. Those are being maintained. The level of the height of the levees is also being maintained and inspected. So, erosion, we don't really measure like erosion as well, but those things do get checked occasionally. I'm not sure how in detail, but if we do see a problem, I know they do have crews that go out and do look at doing repairs if they need it. So as far as following the mandate of doing what we can to possibly maintain the levees, I think we follow that pretty well. So I don't think there's a drop off in what care the city is providing to the levee system, city county is providing to the levee system to meet those requirements. Policing that, if you ask the police, I've asked the police a couple of times when I've seen stuff, they don't have, in order to catch someone doing that, you almost have to have the same equipment and know what's going on those things. And there's a good chance that someone's gonna end up getting hurt if they don't know what's going on. And it's literally possible for them to go out and actually catch somebody.
I understand.
If they do, I'm sure they would be more than willing to give them a ticket. But I've talked to a couple of police and they're like, well, and the old stormwater, the old guy in stormwater, I used to work down at the CMF with those guys. He's like, man, we tried catching people, we tried catching them on the way out, we tried doing this, and they're so mobile in those things that it's almost impossible to, unless you had the whole police force out there, you're not gonna be able to manage catching many people. So.
They got some good equipment to remove some of those chain links because them yee boys.
It doesn't take anything to remove those chains. I mean, I could do it.
Drive over.
I could do it in probably 5 minutes.
We put a boulder, I used to work for them. We put a boulder down and came back months later and the boulder was completely moved out of the way. And we buried the boulder. It was raised up, put off to the side.
I understand the difficulty with it. I'm just sharing with you my observation of the damage that's taken.
From a technical standpoint, I believe that the city meets the criteria for maintaining those levees that the Corps of Engineers is speaking. So the maintenance that they do follows what they're talking about. They're keeping all the requirements are they have a book of requirements and they do their best to maintain those. And I've, like I said, we did the city when that mandate first came through. I think there was about a half a dozen projects came in the first year and about the same in the next 5 years. And those were all done to improve the levees to meet all those standards, and those are still being maintained to this day that I'm aware. So.
Yeah, and to add to what you were saying, when I did work for them, the Corps engineers said that with the yee boys tearing up, we have within the top 5 of the best levees around the US due to the crews that do go out there and maintain them. But it's hard for them to maintain everything. They don't have enough help, enough people to do it all.
That's just my personal opinion and what I've seen. They do a really decent job with what's required.
The public's just not helping them out.
No.
Any other questions?
I'll get at one more.
Remind me of where the multimodal facility is located.
It's right down south of it's right next to Delano, in between Seneca and
West of the ballpark.
north and west of the ballpark just a little bit.
At the corner from the Monarch.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
There's
From the Monarch.
part of it, you know where that rock parking lot is there?
Yep.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Okay.
So,
Like,
yeah, right there.
like Texas and Sycamore.
Yeah, that whole area. I'm not familiar with the plan, so I don't know exactly where everything's going.
In that area.
Yes, right there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Awesome,
Thank
thank you so much.
All right, guys, thank you. Have a great night.
Good job.
I just got clarification that the multimodal center roughly will start this summer and be finished by next summer, so those are rough timelines. And then the project at 235 and Windmill Road started on September 11th, and it should take about a year. So it travels 32,000 cars a day, which is fun. So, okay, moving on.
All right, guys, we are now moving on to the public agenda. This is a portion of the agenda where citizens who want to present to the DAB and to Councilmember Ballard on a topic that is not part of the agenda. You guys have a 3-minute timeline for each speaker, so we do not have any scheduled items. We can go ahead and move on to item number 7 on the agenda. These are off agenda items. Do we have anyone?
Real quickly, and by the way, on the city website, it does say 5 minutes, so I'll be dropping an email so that we can kind of get confirmation on, are we doing 3 or are we doing 5? It's in writing, we probably ought to make sure we double check some stuff on that. Just wanted to thank most of the board members who were on, Vince Hancock from Delano. Thanks, Scott, for keeping me honest. For those who were on the board about 6 months ago, you guys almost unanimously voted down something in our neighborhood. City council didn't see your wisdom and went ahead and went through. We are talking about 247 North Elizabeth, a duplex that was put into an area where a previous home had burned down. Just wanted to let you know that there was some movement in that. They got their permits, they did some construction, they did some things they weren't supposed to do, but most of it got taken care of. On January 3rd, it went on the market for the bargain basement price. Oh my goodness, just $299,000 for 2,100 square feet. For those of you who didn't do the math, the real estate agent has done us a solid by saying, and they're currently going to market, they don't even have a certificate of occupancy yet, and they're planning on marketing at the rental rate of $13.95 a month. So for those of you that think that this infill is going to help us with affordable housing, yeah, not so much. Oh, but good news is, as of this morning, instead of $299,000, price reduced $10,000 this morning. So if you got a spare 300 grand laying around.
Capitalism, baby, capitalism. There you go.
Wonderful way.
Thank you, Vincent. Do we have anybody else? Sir, if you want to state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Yeah, what's up?
Nice
My name
to
is
hear it.
William Leroy Glander. I live at 235 North Elizabeth. It ain't nothing against all of you. It's on the city council that I'm pissed off at. Because I stood up here and I said that this is going to affect my house. It's going to make it harder on me to afford my house. It has. Now I have to work 2 jobs to make ends meet. That's taking time away from my children, taking time away from me. So we need to do better in this city on making affordable housing. A big house like this, nobody thought about what kind of damage that house will do if it catches on fire. What was the planning of that? You see the houses in the neighborhood, that house so big, if it catches on fire, it's going to catch the neighbor's house and the other neighbor's house. Nobody thought about that. And then, yeah, I straight up said that it's a bad idea. It got administratively approved. That needs to stop, straight up. The city needs to take responsibility, and whoever did the administrative approval needs to have some consequences done to them, because that's wrong. You're going to eventually put more people out of their houses by how that house is so high up. There ain't a single house in that neighborhood that estimates that price. That is wrong. So something needs to be done about that. Not just here, throughout this whole city is what I'm saying. That's why I'm standing up here. And I don't care if I make anybody mad. I'm going to tell them someone needs to be slapped upside the back of the head. There, I said it. I'm glad I said it because I've been saying jokes about it and I said I'm going to say it. But yeah, and if you guys want to, bring me in on these meetings because I do got great ideas because like how I said, that house being built that high, if you go over there and look at it, it's taller than the other houses. What if it catches on fire? It's going to be a hazard to the firemen, everybody. Anybody got any questions? But I also want to thank the DAB that did turn it down, because it should have never went to city council and been administratively approved. It should have got sat down and talked to, not administratively approved behind closed doors. And that needs to stop. Straight up. Thank you, everybody.
We have anybody else who wants to participate in the off agenda items for the public agenda? This looks like nobody is wanting to speak on this portion of the agenda. Councilmember Ballard, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to new business, unified zoning code, and the comprehensive plan updates on solar energy convergences. That's a mouthful. Yes.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mary Hunt. I'm in planning department. And we've asked our advanced plans committee, which is a subset of our planning commission, to be the steering committee on this initiative. This came forward to us on renewable energy out in the county. And back in 2019, the council approved the regulations on solar energy, and it went to both groups, went to the county, went to the city. But there's been some activity out there, and it kind of brought it to the attention of some county commissioners, and they wanted it looked at again. So we're good, thank you, Anna. So tonight what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna kind of review the information that this group has been discussing, and then, ask you to provide some comments. We're looking for comments and feedback right now. Yes. Sorry. Am I going the right way? I don't know. Let me get you back. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, looks like you skipped 20 slides. Slide, there it is.
This is the second one.
This is 169 slides.
I know. Okay. So like, oh my Lord.
Everybody get comfortable.
Right. I might be. Anyway, so what happened was the Board of County Commissioners called for a moratorium on any development of solar farms out in the county. Now, this is the big stuff. This is where the only use for that land is solar. It's not a school putting solar panels on the top of their school. That would be an accessory use. The school is the primary, the panels are an accessory use, or somebody just putting it on a few panels on their own roof of their house. This is strictly fairly large scale, utility scale solar farms, and that's what they were putting the moratorium on. The moratorium ends March 20th. Okay, so right now, they're not considering any specific applications. Nothing has been submitted. Of course, nothing can be submitted until this moratorium is over. And so we're looking at some draft changes to the zoning code. And okay, I said that. So. Okay, so current status, okay, existing conditions, I kind of went over that. Keep going. So we have our unified zoning code. It has the renewable energy systems already in there. It's already on the books. It's just that we put a halt to it out in the county. The comprehensive plan does address renewable energy systems, both wind and solar. But it's only a couple of pages. It just supports that, that type of renewable energy take place. And next. I'm sorry, okay, this is where we are today. Right now, we are right over, right around here. Okay, we started, I know you can't read this, but But the advanced plans group has been reviewing this. They've asked for research to be done, best practices, what are all the other cities doing, what are the counties doing? We brought that all forward to them. And we had an open house in mid-November. And then, again, they took all that public feedback. We had an online survey that went active the same night as the open house. And people keep emailing in with their comments. We've probably got, well, I know we have over 100 last time I counted it, but I think we're probably at about 120 comments that have come in through email. Sometimes people just come into the office to express their thoughts on it. And it's all over the board. There are people that are pro solar, and there are people that, you know, want to have some maybe added controls. So anyway, where we are right now is we're down here meeting with all the DABs and the CABs to get your input on this as well. And what will happen here, can I get this up a little bit? Okay. Yeah, there we are. All right, so this Thursday at our advanced plans meeting, we will ask the advanced plans group to make a recommendation to the city, to this, to the full MAPC. All right, and then the MAPC, the planning commission, will then make a recommendation to the city council. And the idea is to wrap this all up by March 20th. If we can do that, and then we'll update the zoning code if we need to do it. Okay. All right, so here's our schedule. Right now, we're on February 5th, sorry. We've got several DAB meetings going on tonight, and then we'll, you know, move it forward. And then we hope to go to the Board of County Commissioners on March 6th, because we leave our little bit of buffer room there for the moratorium because it expires on the 20th. Okay. It's kind of off. How do I? Thank you, Anne. Okay, so I told you about that. We have several reports that are all online for your reading pleasure if you like. We have one on the town hall report, all the feedback from the town hall that was held out at the extension office. We had the online survey that kept going until probably the end of that month. That was November. We've got a best practices report, and we've got a general collective public input report. Any and all of that. We also did a bunch of research, just whether it's academic research or other kind of government publications on solar energy. And so that was all included. So I told you about this, letters, emails. We've done briefings with people and other groups that had invited us out to speak. So here are the themes that kind of rose to the top. Urban growth and development was a concern. The decommissioning of these things 30 years from now, that was a big one. They wanted some assurances really on groundwater contamination, water quality, what could the effects be? And then, let's see, who else do we have here? Well, even wildlife. Okay. So there they are. Those are the ones. Oh, right. Boy. So we have our existing comprehensive plan and zoning code. We've had some public input. We've looked at best practices, and we've surveyed all those other communities. And we went through many throughout Kansas, because Kansas has Kansas law. Okay. And that's what our comprehensive plan looks like over there. A comprehensive plan is a policy document. It's about declaring your intention of what you'd like to do. And that's what it has, like a couple pages on these renewable energy things. But they're not the law. The zoning regulation is the law. So not to confuse them. So here were our themes. Decommissioning was a big one. We want to make sure they're removing the solar equipment, which are those galvanized poles that go into the ground. They wanted that right now. This is where the advanced plans group is right at this moment. Okay, they want that to be removed at a depth of probably 3 to 4 feet. They want some sort of financial assurance, and there are companies out there that do bonding on these projects. And their plans, if somebody submits a plan, they've got to make sure they tell us the length of time it'll be to decommission. And then obviously the city has to be notified that they're planning to decommission that facility. The recommendation on the comp plan was to make no changes to the comp plan. And that runs throughout, no matter what topic it was. They said, we don't need to, they read the kind of the intention of the comp plan and said, that is good as it is. And so another one was groundwater contamination and wanting, additional maybe groundwater testing, and especially testing at the end of the project. And they want a list of construction materials that will be reviewed by our environmental resources director. They look at all of that. So they'll end up making a recommendation to the board. It's not moving. Again, comprehensive plan, no recommended changes. Let's move on to the next topic. Now we got urban growth and development. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but this is in our comp plan. And let's say just take the little town of Goddard. I should, that's something. The town of Goddard. And the dark part is its municipal boundaries. But the blue part around it, that's its urban growth area or its area of influence. And so that's the difference. You look at this kind of tan color right here, that's the city of Wichita's urban growth area. And that is determined by those cities say, hey, this is where we want our boundary to be. This is where we want our area of influence to be. And they get it by proving we can provide utilities, we can provide services like water and sewer and such. That's how that boundary is determined, okay? So, okay, and that's what urban growth area, it anticipates the future growth of a city, goes out to 2035 right now, okay? And that's just a little better depiction than the other map. Okay. So they had a few more comments on this one. So, okay, the city planning commission of these other cities or any city that's impacted needs to be notified that somebody wants to locate one of these solar farms in their area. They review it, they make a recommendation to the planning commission. The planning commission hears the case, wants to hear about what the small city planning commission said, and then they hear the case and they vote. If the city recommends denial, like let's say Goddard said, no, thank you, then they'd be 4 or 5 for county commissioner votes to get that thing through. And you may think, hey, I'm sitting here in Wichita, why are we talking about the county outlet? But the fact is we have a unified zoning ordinance. Where county commissioners hear stuff about the city. City council hears things about the county because they don't have to vote on this stuff. Okay, so here was something that came about. You can see up here at the top, it says Invenergy. That's a company that does these kinds of projects, but there are many firms that do this. They showed us a map of what it would look like because there were some citizens saying, well, we want a 3-mile buffer outside our urban area of growth. And you can see how much of the county it would lop up. This area would still be available. This little area would still be available. And they basically, by having that policy, would ban solar in this county. So we put together a map because our planning commissioner, a couple of them asked for this. They said, well, what's a 1-mile buffer look like? So that pink area is showing you what 1-mile buffer would be, because these people are wanting these projects a little further away, some of them. Okay. Okay. So when it came to the comp plan, no changes. Okay, then the last one, let's see, urban development and growth, this, I don't think it's slide. Urban development and growth, basically no changes there. No changes to the comp plan, not much to say. Here's another important area that came up. Decommissioning is big, size and configuration. Setbacks is one thing. They decided no changes in the setback. The setbacks we have are 40 feet. Some wanted 50 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet away from their city. And the advanced plans right now is leaning towards, so no changes to the comp plan on that one. Size and configuration. Basically what the advanced plan says, hey, we've got this tool. We've got this existing tool called conditional uses. You guys hear about conditional uses all the time. And instead of trying to micromanage every conceivable element of an application that may or may not ever come to us, they said, let's use the conditional use process to tweak things based upon where they're located, okay? Or how big they are, or what setbacks, maybe they do want to increase some setbacks. So these are the kind of things they had to review, and it took several months to do it. But they're leaning right now towards, hey, let's just use the conditional use process to really fine tune some of these projects. Again, comprehensive plan, don't need to change it. Size limit, the majority, the consensus of the group was we don't need to limit the size. Now, throughout Kansas, there are places that have maybe 1,000 acres up to 2,500 acre limits. But about half of the cities we surveyed, they had no limits whatsoever. And 2,500 acres, that's a lot of land. Okay. I mean, it would be hard to find that many property owners, I would think, that want to sign and say, yeah, I'm willing to lease you my farm. And okay, we're gonna go with the conditional use process. That's kind of where things are leaning right now, and no need to change the comprehensive plan at this point. And height was another discussion. One of the some of the research we came up said 20 feet above ground tends to be plenty high for these. You don't really need a lot. So our group, the Advanced Plans Committee, they settled on 25 feet. And 25 feet means if you've got your solar panel here, sometimes it's flat, sometimes it starts to tilt up. The maximum, that tip, the absolute top tip cannot be more than 25 feet. Okay, best practices. It's not gonna be at 25 feet all the time. And no changes to the comp plan. Okay, some other topics that came up is like small versus large systems. This is, like I said at the very beginning, this is about utility scale systems. And then another interesting topic came up, had to do with fire protection. So if somebody submits a plan, it's gonna go through the fire department for their review, especially about things having to do with battery storage, because battery storage, that can have a chain reaction happens in there, and if something goes wrong, it explodes. And so you have to make sure that's far enough away from, say, a property line, make sure that's far enough away from another battery facility. So they look at that and they have all their rules on it right now. So another presentation was made to the Sedgwick County Association of Cities. There are 30 plus people there. And here were some of the comments they commented on, size, scope, location. And they wanted things a mile outside the area of influence. Things like that were some of the comments we received from that one group. So the next steps are, like I said, we are going out to all the DABs and the CABs. And this Thursday we'll go to the advanced plans and we'll finally get them to make a recommendation. Then it heads over to the MAPC and they make their final recommendation. And then it moves on to the county commission and it'll circle back to city council because it's one code. So again, there's the schedule. You saw that earlier. So any questions on solar out in the county? Not a lot of changes. Couple topics had more changes than others, but they think the best way to roll on this is to use the conditional use process because every application, assuming we get more than one, will be different from the last one.
So I have at least one question and a couple of suggestions or recommendations.
Mhm.
The question is concerning the, I guess I'm gonna call it the buffer. You mentioned both 3 mile and 1 mile.
Mhm.
What's the current consensus seems to be? What's the distance between the growth area and the
I mean,
establishment?
of the committee, right now, they don't want one.
Okay.
They asked for the map to be made so they could see it.
Okay.
Okay, all they had seen up to then was a 3 mile buffer, and like, holy cow, we don't wanna just outlaw this thing throughout the county. They said, well, what does 1 mile look like? And then when they started getting on the track of, let's use the conditional use process, if we want, you know, a 1/4 mile or a 1/2 mile outside that urban area of influence, it's not a mile outside their city boundary. It's a mile outside that urban growth area. And so, that's how that came about,
Okay.
okay?
Two suggestions for consideration.
Mhm.
The content in there looks really good as far as the decommissioning, financial assurance, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
But that does concern me, and I think both well, I'll tackle them one at a time. I'll say that from that perspective, I'm not sure that 5 years is gonna be adequate for a reassessment on that cost. Because to the best of my knowledge, there's only one major solar panel recycling facility in the whole country right now, and they only refurbish or recycle material that they manufacture. So that's one concern.
Mhm.
The other is relative to groundwater contamination. I don't know what the percentage is, but in the little research I did, there were several sites recorded in the Wall Street Journal about problems with construction sites and runoff. Not groundwater, but runoff contamination
Mhm.
during the construction process. So I really encourage us in our inspection and certification process, to keep a close eye on that. Please.
Any other feedback? Aaron? Yes.
This is more of a background question, but why is wind energy conversion banned in the county and the city?
That was done back in 2019.
Okay.
And it went to both county and the city.
Yep.
For approval. And basically it was because there was, I think, the concern that it would interfere with our aviation industry and that it could prevent the expansion of that industry.
And then last question, or I guess only real question for me, reading through this, I don't see requirements or inspections around winterization. I know that the extreme temperatures, and I know that can mess with the utility lines a lot. Is there a measure the county can impose or someone that can look after it or inspect it to ensure that those will continue to operate or not become hazardous in the event of extreme weather?
Yeah, I can't answer that. That's the first time I've heard that, so. So
Right.
are you talking about- So did I. If you're thinking of extreme cold or extreme heat.
Both, but
What he's talking about. Are you talking about wind farms or solar?
solar
Solar.
farms.
What do you do to winterize?
I'm saying does the extreme
How do you
heat
winterize
or cold?
non-conforming?
I mean, I can understand that. Mine perform better in the cold weather. There's less resistance in there to build up heat, so yeah, the performance actually goes up with them.
So is there a separate residential component to these regulations, or
No,
it's just?
this is strictly for commercial utility scale solar. The the regulations we have for somebody putting something on their house, or like Mays High School, putting panels on their roof, that's not touched here. Whatever, the regulations we have in place just stay the same for that.
Do we have anyone to do this prior?
Any other feedback? I'm sorry, you had a
Do we have
question.
any existing farms from before?
I don't know. I haven't heard.
We have any solar farms now?
If you don't look at the one out there on the Catholic retreat.
We have like a large scale. We're talking
Large
like
scale farm, we don't have.
Not that. A few houses.
Where we had some like Frost and Butler,
Right.
you know.
I have one bit of feedback. I personally cringe anytime somebody brings a conditional use to this board. Because it seems like that's something that we use to shoehorn something that doesn't really belong. And so I would selfishly just rather see you put together some regulations of what you want it to be and then hold to that. I mean, there's always gonna be a place for the conditional use, but I would rather see it be an exception than not a rule.
Anyone else?
I'm just curious, in the research that was done, how many solar farms or this has been looked at maybe are actually in metropolitan counties with like such a large footprint that's the city, like the city of Wichita? I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of solar farms in Texas. They're like not in those, they're out of those counties, like
Yes.
away.
Well, you go up to Lawrence and you go up to, Manhattan, that area. They have things that are in place now, but they're not big like this. They're like, 200 acres, 500 acres. But this is still kind of young. I mean, I don't mean that solar energy is young. It's not. But placing them here and having people come in and talk to farmers about leasing their property, that's relatively new. So, we're learning too. So, but as far as that, I'd say, yeah, and they kind of need to be somewhere near a community so they can look into the system. Otherwise, it's traveling a long, long way to service people.
Any other feedback? Okay, we'll move on to Metropolitan Area Planning Department zoning letter notification process.
I have to add one more thing.
Okay.
I left at your place settings, this copy that has all the yellow highlighting. This is the proposed, actually, that's a bad word. It's not proposed yet. This is what we've come up with so far based on what the Advanced Plans Committee has said, okay? It still may get tweaked again, but these are the this is the, all this time going back all last fall and all into now February, and it's coming down to a few lines in the zoning code. So you'll probably see this again another time. All right. So next I'm gonna talk about notification. Okay. We had some comments from city council people on notification. Some of those comments have come from DABs, And so we've been looking at this for some time now. Let's see here. And what we're asking for is just some feedback. And so the topics on notification, this is notification of zoning actions, where people are notified that there's, a rezoning or a conditional use or some other, PUD, whatever. So should the distance be kept the same or expanded? Should we include more recipients or keep it the same? Should we be trying to include Spanish and Vietnamese as other languages in communicating this? And then the letter content, and I pass that out to you too. That's a draft. Can we make this document a little easier? Because we staff the telephone certain times during the week, all of us, and we get calls from people saying, I got this letter and I don't know what it means. And so it's like, oh gosh, isn't there an easier way to communicate this without making somebody read 4 pages of text? So that's just, these are the things that came up. Okay, so, this is what we're gonna talk about. You know, we've got interest, we got our current practice right now. I don't know if you've ever received one of those letters, but it's 4 pages long and it tells you what they're doing, when the public hearing is, et cetera, and how they can participate in the meeting. So we have our mailed notifications. We start at 200 feet. 200 feet is the distance within a city that you must notify. That's the state law. You go out to the county and it becomes 1,000 feet. Now, by policy, our department, years and years ago, I think it's back in the 70s, opted to increase the notification area in the city based upon how much acreage your project had. So you have a 20-acre project, you are going to communicate that to a bigger distance than if it's just one house that wants an accessory building about that. Then it's just the minimum, okay? And so we'll talk about recipients, we'll talk about language, okay? So back in about July of 22, this came up through the city council, I mean, a couple of times, members of the public, DABs, and these are all the meetings that we've had so far from September through this month. We had a July, last summer, we had a city council workshop, so we got some direction on that. Tonight, we've got 4 DAB meetings that are gonna be hearing about this, and then the rest will hear about it coming up here in a few days. So, you know, right now what we do, you get your application, it goes to the DAB, the planning commission hears it, it goes to the city council, and you know, maybe the application's approved, maybe it's not. Okay, newspaper publication. We do more than one type of, more than just that letter, okay? We do the newspaper notice, we do email, people that sign up on our website, they get all these notices. We got the yard sign and we've got the letter. It is required by state law.
Who does the yard signs?
Well, we prepare them in the office and then the applicant takes that sign and installs it.
And what if they don't?
Nothing happens.
Well, if somebody, yeah, how do you know if somebody didn't do it? Nothing, probably.
It's to the discretion of the planning commission whether they're gonna choose to hear the case, defer the case, deny the case, based on that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understand the sign isn't legally required. It's just a policy of the planning commission. Okay, let's go down here. Here's what a legal publication looks like. You read one of those. And of course, the purpose of that is to notify the general public, not just the people living near this. It's
The
part of,
people that take the paper,
for people who take the paper, yes.
which is not many.
Not as many as it used to be. And so, it's still a state statute and it's 20 days prior to the planning commission meeting. We also have emails. We use Constant Contact and you can go on our website, the front page of our website, you go just to the bottom and it says sign up and you can. Okay, there's a picture of our sign. Again, for the general public, somebody driving by, walking by, and that has to go out 13 days before the hearing or more. And then here's the notification letter. This is just one page. It actually is 4 pages. It too is required by the state statute. And we talked about these distances. And so here they are. Up to an acre is 200 feet. Once you go past an acre, it's 350 feet. Once you pass 6 acres, it's up to 500, then 700, and then over 25 acres, it's 1,000 feet, just like the county requirement. And so notification letter, who gets it? Well, right now, per the state law, only the property owner gets the notification. Okay, and that is what we currently do. We also send it out to registered homes associations, just as a courtesy, neighborhood associations, same thing. Okay. the applicant has to go to a title company and purchase the list of those property owners that are within a certain distance, right? And then that becomes part of their application packet. Okay. So here's where people kind of get mixed up. It's sometimes hard to explain. There's a protest area and then there's a notification area. Now, if your notification area is 200 feet, great. But your protest area is 800 feet, they match. But if you're in one of those applications where no, we had because of policy, we had to notify people within 500 feet. Only the people within the 200 feet have standing to protest, okay? And then it's
What's the
quick
purpose of the notification?
to let people know that something's happening near them.
But they can't do anything about it.
But they get-
They don't have it, no, because the state law says 200 feet.
They can sign a protest petition, it just doesn't count towards changing the map.
That's right.
For the city council.
Yeah.
They can sway us.
Okay.
So we have a question?
Well, I can think of a situation in the last couple of years where I think whatever the regulations are, they need to be changed up there at 21st and Coolidge. There were some commercial buildings, a little Mexican restaurant and, the old bank that, was empty. And a beauty salon, a tavern, and that car wash, whoever put in that car wash there are no people that live within 200 feet, so nobody got notified. But all the people north of where the fire station is, with the fire people that were here tonight, station number 7, their opinion didn't count squat. And they did not want the car wash. I live in that area. I did not want the car wash. There's a lot of us did not want the car wash. So that needs to be changed. Even if it has to go up to state, it needs to be changed.
It is a state statute.
State statute on
Well,
protest.
it needs to be changed at the state then. And the city needs to initiate it because it has affected people in Wichita. And what happened there was wrong. Put some small businesses out of business. So the almighty dollar in Wichita wins almost always.
Well, I've always been curious as to how exactly that is measured. I mean, if you have the boundary of the property and you count, if from 200 feet from the eastern edge of that property is, right on the corner of my lot, just by a bit, will I still get a notice?
Yes.
Does it have to be my address?
What do you mean your address?
I mean, the house, the actual house.
Oh, no, if it just snips the corner of your property, you're in that area.
And
And you don't have to be in 100%.
Right.
You could be in 6 inches if, That's how it currently works. Yes, sir?
The state statute, is that a minimum requirement? Could we actually adopt a more, we could say in Wichita, we want to notify or even have the where you can protest area, that could be larger in Wichita versus the state. Is that a minimum requirement? Or
It's the
you can't do-
maximum.
It's maximum.
It's the maximum currently.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so we're not.
You can't change it really.
No, and when we, years ago, when they increased it from 200 to 350 to 5, we couldn't take that protest thing with it, and
But most towns, it'll work 200 feet. But you're talking about Wichita. And a lot of commercial buildings, Candy Corner across from that property is, what is it, Meineke? Across the street is Wendy's. Across south is Southwest National Bank. There were no houses. Well, those businesses don't give a shit about it. In bad weather, on a clean day, you'll have cars lined up, waiting to go around the corner to go in the car. That car wash should have never been approved there.
So did we, get it set where it's in multiple languages? Is that?
We'll get,
been
we're getting
approved?
right there. Mary,
Haven't got there.
so any more questions from the DAB before we go to the public? Any other questions?
So Mary, are you finished with your presentation? No, okay. I think I suggest that we let the presenter finish the presentation and then we'll open it up for the DAB to ask questions and comments, and then we'll bring it back to the public for questions and comments.
All right, here's a map showing some property, couple properties. The green, whoa, what happened there? There we go. The green line is the 200 feet. And then the gold line goes out, like about 500 feet or so. But the properties within the 200 feet are the ones that have protest petition standing. Okay, a little bit about distance. Here's what other cities are doing. Almost everybody except Lawrence does 200 feet. Doesn't matter how big the project is, if it's within their city limits. And then we went out much further. We went to other cities, other states, that sort of thing. And a little more variety there because their state laws are different. But I thought Oklahoma City was kind of interesting. They have 300 feet. That's quite common here. But they have to have a minimum of 10 property owners. And if there are fewer than 10 within that 300 feet, then they keep reaching out in 100-foot increments until they get them. Because you got all these branches and things. Okay, but these are the other cities that we looked at. They're not too different from us, except I didn't see anybody that had this gradation thing like we have. Alright, so here's an idea. Currently, that 200, 350, those are feet. Okay, and then one option we have is let's just bump it up by 2.5 times. That's how much distance we'd be looking at. If we took what we have today, multiplied it by 2.5, that's what we get. And then the column B is talking about, well, let's just start at 500 for everybody and keep that until we get down to the 750 and the 1,000. Okay, just some options that will eventually be looked at. And right now, they're looking at probably no changes to that. One was to decrease the distance, which really you cannot do, or increase the distance. So here's just some examples. Here's Riverside, 18th Street. There's a little house right here. Okay, and that little kind of peach colored thing, that shows you where 200 feet goes. Okay, I know it's a little hard, but here's the green. Okay, the green is 500, and then the purple is 1,000. You're gonna get a lot of properties, a lot of addresses in here that applicant has to pay for. Here's another example, down on Meridian and Sunnybrook. Not quite, the lots are just a little bit bigger, okay? Then we go on the east side, near Central and Woodlawn. Those lots again are bigger, 10, 12,000 square foot lots. So there's gonna be slightly fewer people notified in a place like this. Okay, so what happens? You got an applicant, they bring it in, they bring their application in. They have to go to the title company and ask for those addresses of everybody within 200 feet, 350, whatever their requirement is. For $175, they'll get 10 addresses and it's $18 per additional property. So you can imagine exponentially going out how expensive this would get for somebody. The planning department, we've estimated right now, and this is back a couple of years, $2.64 for every mail notification. That includes our labor, postage, paper, envelope. Not as much for us, but a lot for them. And so, we did some, but you can see right up here, 200 feet, 33 addresses, 114, 390 addresses that they have to pay. And the rest of the chart has the same thing. So, any questions?
Any questions from the dad first?
This has been my Roman Empire for the last year, so,
Louder, please.
sorry. I've been thinking about this the last year. Is there a jumping off point that y'all are presenting to city council here soon, or is?
Not yet.
All right, wonderful. Actually, Councilman Ballard and I were just talking about this. Why do we make the applicants go through the title company instead of, say, I mean, if you go to any mail house, they'd have the addresses. If we're just going, well, so I should back up. I do not think that this should be only to property owners. That's discriminatory, to say the least. And it is denying folks the opportunity to participate in the democratic process here. So not going to property owners, but then why do we make applicants go to the title company when it's so expensive as opposed to anywhere else?
Yes, I understand. That policy came about for liability reasons. Lawyers will tell you, you have, that they're protecting the city council, they're protecting the planning commission by having them do this, because those addresses are, they're officially verified. I've had people say, well, there's only so many parcels around mine, can't I just go and hand deliver? But, you know, sadly, no. But that's our current policy, that's why we do it, because they're trying to protect. Because the first thing that'll happen, and I worked in a city where we did that, we pulled up the addresses for them off our GIS. Oh, I mean, every week there was somebody saying, I didn't get notified, I didn't get notified, I didn't get notified.
Can I interject real quick? The reason for that is because very often the public record on the taxes is not up to date with the actual filing of deeds. So there's a delay of oftentimes many months, so.
I mean, I work in mass mailing with my day job, and so
yeah,
why do we need a name? We can just say current resident of, say, I live at 1750 North Athenian. Current residents of 1750 North Athenian with local postcard.
but you have to notify the property owner.
Property.
Right.
Which is the problem that should, I hope.
I mean, there could be a both and, I think, but.
There could. There
Could
could.
be an address with the
Because,
tax.
I mean, so I'll give an example. Over in District One, I had there's a case not too long ago where a landlord owned all 14 houses on the block. And then every house around them was also owned by landlords. And so nobody on that block knew that their landlord wanted to tear down all their houses. So that's a situation that I think comes top of mind to me of how do we make sure these folks know that they can make the closes.
Sure. And that's why this issue came up. But let me tell you that, let's just assume we stay with the title company. In order to get them to add in the site address, like 123 Maple Street, it's not on there right now. We have a legal description. And we have the owner's name, address, another column, okay? In order to add in the site address, it bumps the price from $18 to $20.
Which goes to the original question of why are we going to the title? I mean, like
Well,
legally,
okay,
yes.
that's a good
But,
question.
I mean,
Are there other legal options for us?
I have neighbors who in my old neighborhood would send postcards to the McDonald neighborhood and one immediately north, and they were able to get every address for about $150.
Yeah.
From their mail shop.
But will it meet legal scrutiny? That's the question.
So.
Well,
but is there
the
business
issue
to
isn't
do?
about the address, the issue is about the ownership.
That is.
So to verify ownership, you're gonna have to have someone who's got some skills to do that, which isn't something that's just readily available. Like, that's why the title company does it. I also think that pricing may be a little bit off, so. Cause if we're making that kind of, then.
I'll say the ownership is, I think, a core issue
Yeah.
and why so many folks are engaged with the rezoning process. I'll also say, as much as I appreciate that we put our notifications in Wichita Eagle, that is a paywall website for most folks, and you can circumvent it through the library. I learned how to do it this weekend, but it's a pain in the ass. And so I think on sites like the Wichita Beacon, the Community Voice, KMUW, there's other news sources, and we got a presentation, was it last month? most folks hear about this from word of mouth or the television. I don't think TV is gonna be broadcasting it, but other online social media sources are a good third best.
Yeah.
Other languages, I think, is a given.
Yeah, I got your questions and I'm really not done, so let's, you can ask questions about everything I've talked about, and we'll move on.
Great.
Sorry about that, I said it was. Okay. Anybody else? Nope. All right. This is stupid, they had, there it is. Okay, we did that, all right. Okay, who should be notified? Do we notify just the property owners, or should it be the people that live there too? Right now, statutes say property owners at a minimum. Okay? No other city we contacted is doing anything beyond that minimum, okay? Exclusively to property owners. Here we can have no changes. We cannot reduce distribution. We could increase distribution by adding the site address, which would give you the renter, because we do not have a rental license in the city. So we could query that if we had it, but we don't. Let's see here. Anna, can you help me speak this? Okay. All right, so notification area properties could be minimal, 8, could be as many as 400, and it can vary significantly. Okay, we've got that. Here, this is what the title company will charge to add those other people, $2 per property address. And it doesn't matter if it's a rental property or not, because they don't know either. Okay, so you end up doubling the mailing costs. Sorry, Anna. Oh. So here we have an example. We've got 30 properties in an area. They're gonna have to only have $60 more and to notify those people. And then the example of the properties, we got again 30, maybe 20% of them are renters. Increased cost for us is about $16. If we can identify renters from owner occupants. I don't mean to be confusing about that. Okay, any questions on that part?
So I guess it's just a thought, it's really not a question. If we have both of those data points available, then in the case where the resident address and the property owner's address aren't the same, then in theory, we could mail to both of them. And in the case where they're the same, we only mail to one.
Right,
Okay.
but you gotta have a person that sits down with that list and marks different, the same, different, and you go through. How many pages?
Called algorithms, that's doable.
Pardon me?
Those
Well,
are-
if the title company can do that for us, yes, absolutely. Yeah. We're just trying to get we don't wanna finish all of this with the advanced plans or the planning commission. We want to get it to you a little earlier than that. Anyway. Any questions?
Any questions from that?
Okay, now we talk about languages, and languages is gonna be kind of short because we looked into different kinds of, do we translate the letter and send out letters in 3 languages? Well, that's a lot of work. Do we have a language translation service that they can call, because the police can do that, fire can do that, housing department does that. That was an idea. But our lawyers came back and said, no, because if you're offering it to Spanish and Vietnamese, why aren't you offering it to Dutch, French, and whatever is out there? Okay, and would there be legal challenges because of that?
Well, how do police and fire do it?
They pay for a language service, and the person calls in and said in their language, I need translation. And so they have like this 3-way call. They have the staff person, they have the citizen, and then they have the translator. And these translators are certified translators. But usually they're just asking for general information. The kind of information we're putting out there affects the changing of a law. When you rezone, you're changing the law. And so that's why the city attorney said, just back off on this one. Now, you may say, no, move forward on this and see what we can do. But right now, that's their view, and the advanced plans have said, okay, if that's what you think. So you may have to come back to this on another day. You know, you get some of the changes made so things are better, but then you come back and get the things you didn't get the first time.
Any other questions about?
About just this section?
Yeah.
Let me ask just a brief question, see if it makes sense. So based on where things are at today, what do you foresee being, for lack of a better term, any changes?
Don't know yet.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know yet, because the biggest changes here, like, expanding the notification area, that is gonna be very expensive for the applicant. And they do take that into consideration. You have somebody who just wants to, you know, I've had people come in who want an accessory dwelling unit, it's like, I have to go through 90 days before for the council to approve it. And now I'm gonna add another $1,000 to their bill. I don't add, the title company charges them, but I mean, that's a lot of out-of-pocket money for most homeowners.
So just a very quick follow-on question. The path that Oklahoma City took in order to avoid the complications that some in the audience have voiced, as far as minimal number of residents that might get contacted, is that kind of option legal within the state of Kansas?
I think it is. But, you know, we go out, we go out 1,000 feet out in the rural areas. I don't think
I'm
we're
sorry.
gonna have.
The Oklahoma City instance, I think, had a minimum of like 8 to 10 occupants or
10
owners.
property owners, yeah.
Yeah. Is that type of approach legal in the state of Kansas?
I don't know, we'll find out.
Okay.
But it would only be for notification.
Right.
Yep.
So protest still stays in the 200 feet?
That's state law.
Notification would still have a minimum of 200.
No max.
Or protest is maximum.
Notification.
Anybody else? Do you have any other thoughts on the matter? There she is, there's Anna, and she can forward anything to me.
No, this is really, sorry. When I walk into City Hall, there's signs in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese at the front. Did the city attorneys also say that we can't do that because we'll get sued for not having French on?
No.
Okay. It just sounds on its face a little
They
ridiculous.
put this out, and they're just trying to capture as many people as they can. But it's not a legally required letter that a property owner is entitled to. So that whole language thing, I don't think of it as dead, okay? I still think we have to find a way at some point to address that issue and still not shoot ourselves in the foot.
Is this the last section or you have more to present?
Oh, I had a little bit there. What do I? Yeah, okay, we said that. Just the letter. I handed out this. And this was an example of a letter that got shortened. And so we don't know if this is the done thing or not, but this version gets it down to 2 pages, meaning one front and back. So one piece of paper and an envelope. And so it just makes it just easier, and we think it has everything. The big box is for a map.
No.
Okay, so that it's just a thought.
So your purpose here is to, get feedback from us. So I think District 6, I think our feedback is gonna be that we want the letters in Spanish and business.
Is that what you're saying?
That's,
Keep pursuing that?
Well, I think, I mean, the point you brought up was ultimately the amount of work, labor intensive, but if you look at your shortened version, ultimately you're changing one box, which is the details box frequently. The rest are dates are easily, translatable, but you can have a standard formatted letter in both Spanish and Vietnamese that you can work from.
And I would encourage the lawyers to be a little flexible in thinking about cost saving measures, particularly around title company, and that it should not solely be property owners that receive these notifications.
Yes, I have that down. Yeah.
Got a couple pieces of feedback, I'm sorry. I have yet to see a business owner, that's not true. It's rare that we see a business owner come in here and you have an opinion about a zoning change. It's almost always a resident. And so I think maybe the notification going out to property owners within the first 200 feet is probably right. I mean, it's what we have to do. But anything outside of that, I would think you would want to send only to the resident. Because a lot of times it's going to be the property owner as well. And those are really the people that we want to notify about changes within their community, the people that live there. And much as I want to contain costs and the ability for people to start new businesses and get zoning changes and stuff like that, there are a lot of, maybe not a lot, but there are a fair amount of knuckleheaded zoning changes that come through here. And so for that reason, I'm really not so worried about increasing the cost to the applicants. But I really want to make sure that we do right by the people that live around it. So if we can make it a little more expensive at the cost of helping more people, then I'm okay with that.
But if you're talking about the cost of me personally on my own home, if I'm already spending $20,000 on a renovation and I have to spend $6,000 more to get, I can't afford that. And is that fair to me as a homeowner?
I think if you went to only sending it to residents outside of that 200, you would contain the cost for what you have to send. And then I think a mailing house would be able to pick up the rest if it was only residents and not homeowners.
And it's just current resident of houses out within between the 200 and 1,000. That's
I would agree if that's the way they go, but if we're talking through a title company, I feel like for businesses, go for it,
Yeah.
right? But for individual homeowners, it's so.
Sure.
I definitely think it has to go out in multiple languages. I don't.
Is there anything else here for clarity?
Okay.
Is there a way,
We're still at the top real quick. So.
is there a way to differentiate between a homeowner versus a business? In the notification?
Well, we can't do it at the city because we don't have rental licensing. The only way we can do it is this gentleman over here said. You look at this list and you've got an address for the house that's within the notification area. And then you have another address because the folks live in Florida and own it, right?
So, but I'm saying if I as a corporation or a company am trying to do a zoning change, can the rules be different than if I'm a homeowner changing something on my own property?
I guess it's quick rule.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
I think it's a question. I mean, I don't know.
There's a due process issue there.
I'm not a lawyer. Just a homeowner.
And if you just have a typical residential property, the properties in that 200 feet are gonna be minimal.
I don't think I see the need to increase the, I think in that residential example you gave the map, that 200 feet, that's a lot of, I'm not. We get a lot of complaints from people because they're like, but it's mostly because, not that they didn't know about it, it's that they wanted to protest about it. And I'm not sure I think of it really something. to
Well, the
fix
thing is,
there.
our website has a way for them to sign up for notifications and they
Right.
get to read the whole
Yep.
staff report. And, I mean, it's not like they can't be notified. They can help a little bit that way.
Counterpoint notification, so having gone through a couple of these on the citizen side of it, it is a lot easier to explain to people what is happening when they know about it. And so, like, for example, there's the big Wesley rezone that they had where they're building their physical rehab center out between Country Club and Vassar. I could, because of the 200-foot range, if I went 2 houses back, no one had heard about it. They just knew that there was a giant chain link fence up there for a year. And so to Mark's point of doing right by the citizens, and I think like a 500-foot notification is extremely reasonable, since those were folks who, in a residential neighborhood, would have been affected by increased traffic was many of the concerns that folks brought up, the construction, foundation damage to nearby properties and all those.
We had a feedback from the dad before we go out to the public.
Yeah, is there a way to include, I mean, with the Oklahoma example, you have to go out and find 10 property owners or whatever. Is there a way to make that 10 residential property owners? Because if you have a situation like she was talking about, where all of the properties within 200 feet are businesses, then effectively we've notified no homeowners.
It really
Probably
depends
rare,
on the
but-
size of the rezoning lot or lots. Once they go past an acre, it bumps it up to 350. So no. I don't think the title companies don't keep that kind of data that they can maybe query that,
Okay,
that I know of. I don't work there.
go out to the public.
I was gonna comment on the use of a title company to determine what parcels are within 200 feet. I'd suggest you talk to the Sedgwick County GIS department. I'm sure they can do that work, and I suspect that they can do it significantly cheaper than the title company would charge the city and county.
Well, all of Sedgwick County GIS comes to us, so we would do it. They're not gonna
Right.
do it for us. But again, you need staff to do that.
Sure. But I think,
So your suggestion is do it in-house.
certainly look at it. I mean, if the
That's fine.
concern is cost to the property owner, and it seems like the city should absorb some of that cost in terms of implementing regulations.
Well, like I can see some situations where, like the car wash, where it didn't really include anybody that would have a real say. Most of those businesses, I know a lot of them, or I know some of them, got bought up, and the business has been there a long time, but the landlords changed. So I think if you had a minimum of like 10, that was what was mentioned, different property owners, then that would, for that, you had a big street on 2 sides and a river and a fire station, and there wasn't anybody to complain because in my experience, not that I'm keeping track, and going to a lot of these things even before Maggie was on, if whoever was here, if the public doesn't want it, it usually doesn't happen. You know, if you get almost everybody voting, now I know there's some exceptions, but most of the time, but if there's nobody to come and be out here and complain, then, you know, it pretty much goes through, especially after it comes from planning. So I think 10, if you had 10 property owners, especially if they live here, and they get notified, they're gonna come and complain, and if they all say no, it probably won't happen.
But I can see situations like the car wash where you've got a park or something like that and there's just, two guys get a letter and they don't read it. So anyway. Or something on your issue with translation. How about just sending it all out in English? And is there something like a international symbol for translation? Sticker at the bottom of that letter that you could have a QLR or a place to go to for translation of that letter that you have an
Actually,
ID number on.
Google Translate will do it for free,
Okay.
but we don't know what they're telling them.
See something
That-
interesting,
that's-
run
that's
through and
got
find out how your
lawyers
letter's
got it
translated.
But there's nothing preventing them if they,
Well, you sent them notice.
yeah,
They would
they'd
talk
have
to
to
them about it.
PDF it and send it off and, I did that in the office and had, and Christina take a look at the letter to see if it was close. It was.
Simple sentences help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more feedback?
I just wanna go back to this car wash deal. There was no homeowner in that area that had any voice, period.
Yeah, that's what he was reading.
Yeah, I mean, zero.
But even in Doug's example, 10 in that example may never have touched a homeowner. You could have 10 commercial businesses within that extended piece, so you would still get 10. But then you get to March Point, and I'm in the same boat. I rarely remember a time where we had a commercial owner protest the zoning change.
But, you know, we're the biggest city in the whole state. That's why I think some changes need to be made up at the state. I mean, where I grew up, Wellington, 200 feet covers a lot of territory. Or Andale or whatever, almost every town, 200 feet in the whole state of Kansas covers a lot of territory. But not in Wichita. So, and I just think the wrong decision was, plus, like Doug said, it's right by the river. You got a car wash right by the river. Who knows what's gonna, you know, chemicals or whatever. It should never have been approved, but, anyway. I believe changes need to be made.
There are a couple of questions and then a few comments. Did I read your presentation correctly in that the applicant hires the title company to generate the mailing list and then planning actually sends out the letters?
Sure.
Okay, so the stamps, everything, that comes at our cost, correct? So since you also happen to be one of the Cora us custodians for planning department, does that mailing list also then become a Kansas Open Record?
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah, the entire application, whatever in the application is.
that should be available through Cora.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next comment, which is the city has had this discussion for years about paper of record. And being in some smaller communities, it's the government keeping the paper in business because they're required to put certain things in there. We don't have to wait for the state law to change. I think that just like we can actually start doing press releases, communications department has stopped issuing press releases on the city website. They've not done it for 2 years. I think this would be a phenomenal opportunity. Instead of just having people sign up for constant contacts, every single one of these letters could be pasted on the county city website for free. It doesn't cost us a dime to put that on there. If you're making it print to PDF to make a file, it takes 2 more clicks to say, put it on the website. Anna does a great job of taking all these agendas and saying, okay, every time we need this agenda, I get an email to me because I signed up through the city manager's office. But for my neighbors who don't get it that way, I can tell them, go to Maggie's website, 2 clicks away, you're looking at that agenda. And if these letters were put on there, it'd make my job a whole lot easier to tell people, I don't know what's going on, where do I go for information? I can just say straight to your website.
Vincent, I can save you for a request. You email the planner, they'll usually send it to you. I haven't had a problem.
Yeah.
I would just mention too that, I don't know how the other districts handle it, but I know how important zoning cases are to District 6, especially some of the ones that are in neighborhoods. So I have Anna post these. We get an early warning notice, and so she posts them on the District 6 website. So or any way they didn't get the paper or look at things like that, I do ask her to post those on there so that people in the area can be watchful for those as well, so. Any other comments before we move on?
Yeah, Mary wants to know how to get to the District Six website.
It's just on our Facebook page, the District Six, Facebook page. I can help you with it before you leave.
Or go to wichita.gov and search for Maggie Ballard.
Any other, feedback before we go on to the next? You're done, right, Mary?
Yeah.
Okay.
You are.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, moving right along. We are gonna move on to our first zoning case, 2023-0073. Welcome, Christina. Thank you for your patience.
Of course.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Reed with planning staff, and I'm here to present on zoning case number zone 2023-0073. So this is a zone change request from MF 29 Family Residential and Neighborhood Office District to General Commercial District, and a waiver of the compatibility standards for the rear property line to allow for the use is technically warehousing, but it's going to be an office flex space building with 3 rental spaces and a roll-up door. That is what the applicant has proposed for this property. So it's a little bit under half an acre in size. It's located on the east side of North Waco Avenue, just south of West 9th Street North. It's currently undeveloped. And so the applicant is primarily interested in an office development with roll-up doors. We looked extensively through the zoning code, and if they want roll-up doors, it's considered to be a use of warehousing. And the most restrictive zoning classification that allows warehousing is general commercial. So we don't want to see general commercial on the site. It allows a lot of very intense uses that are frankly just not appropriate for the area in staff's opinion. So, we spoke with the applicant, and we are amenable to a protective overlay on the site. And what that protective overlay does is it restricts the uses that are permitted on the site while still giving the applicant the opportunity to move forward with development. So the other request is a waiver of the compatibility standards for the rear property line. So what that means is that, so essentially, if you're within a certain distance of residential zoning, I believe it's 500 feet, your building can only be so high, and it has to be further back from the property line. And that's just to prevent, skyscrapers going next to single family houses. So, we spoke with the applicant last week, and, the applicant is requesting a waiver just of the setback standards for the rear property line. And that's to accommodate the proposed development on site, as well as screening and landscaping that's required. Because again, when you're within a certain distance of a residential area, if you're adjacent to a residential area, you're required to put up screening of a fence that's between 6 to 8 feet in height. And then you're also required to implement landscaping, which is 1 shade tree or 2 ornamental trees for 40 linear feet of a property. So the applicant is still amenable to the compatibility height standards that we talked about. And so no structure on the site can exceed 45 feet in height. Normally, if it wasn't within this residential area, it would be 80 feet. So he's looking to build, an office space, and so that'll be about 35 feet tall. So he's amenable to still enforcing the compatibility height standards. I mentioned earlier that it will need to provide screening and landscaping on the south, east, and west sides. The property to the north of this, right on the corner, is zoned general commercial, so they're not required to implement screening or landscaping for that property. So I'm going to skip ahead here to the conformance to some of the plans and policies, whether the requested zone should abide by them or not. So it is in conformance with the community investment plan, as
when we take a look at the 2035 Wichita Future Growth Concept Map, which is here, we identified the subject site to be appropriate for commercial uses. And then the Community Investments Plan also has a set of locational guidelines. And one of the locational guidelines states that people should encourage infill development that maximizes public investment in existing and planned infrastructure and services. So the applicant here is proposing an infill development on a vacant lot. And when we talk about the compatibility guidelines, how compatible are commercial properties with residential properties, or higher intensity commercial properties, lower intensity commercial properties. Those abide by compatibility guidelines. And one of them states that neighborhood serving retail and office uses and high density residential uses can be appropriate along arterial streets such as Waco, on small infill sites near residential uses, or through conversions of residential structures if there are appropriate site design features that limit traffic, noise, lighting, and adverse impacts on surrounding residential and are provided the scale of the development that is appropriate for its context. So the requested zone change is proposing infill development along an arterial street, and they are subject to screening and landscaping, which should mitigate a lot of the adverse effects on surrounding residential properties. We also take a look at the Wichita Places for People plan. Strategy 6 is one of the strategies that's mentioned in the Wichita Places for People plan, and it aims to encourage infill and redevelopment that is contextual to the environment in which it is occurring. So if we scroll up a little bit to the zoning map, so we kind of looked at this from the immediate context and also larger context. So if you look directly to the north of the subject site, everything that is in pink and red is zoned commercial. Pink is general commercial, red is limited commercial. And then to the west of that, to the east of that, where it's this grayish, brownish color, that's an apartment complex. And then you have the things that are in white, and that is single family residential. So we're seeing, this gradual transition between the high intensity GC zone property in pink, and then the grayish brown, that's B multifamily, and then white is single family. And then to the west, we do have a place of worship on the yellow, but that is separated by an arterial street. So however, we did take a look at the Midtown Neighborhood Plan, and it's not exactly in conformance with the Midtown Neighborhood Plan because the plan really emphasizes commercial development near 13th and Broadway, where Broadway serves as the main commercial corridor. And the plan also has its own future use land map, and it identifies the subject site as appropriate for professional and administrative services on the northern half of this property, and then multi-unit fourplex or less on the southern half. So they are, proposing an office space, but there's also going to be warehousing permittable. So we're saying that the warehousing itself would not be in conformance with this future land use. So based upon the information available prior to the public hearings, planning staff recommends that the zone change request be approved, subject to a protective overlay that says that the uses on site are limited to those permitted by right in the neighborhood retail district, in addition to warehousing, and that's allowed in GC General Commercial District as defined by the Unified Zoning Code. So this recommendation is based on the golden rules that we apply to every zoning case, conditional use case. You're welcome to read through those. I'll just skip ahead to the last one. At the time the staff report was prepared, well, I wrote the report, so I only received one phone call on the development, and it was a member of the public who was curious about the development application, did not necessarily, oppose or support the development application. So let's scroll through some of the photos here. So this is sorry, if we could go up a little bit, this is the future land use map that was part of the Midtown Neighborhood Plan. Did the arrow go away? Where'd the arrow go? Is there an arrow? I thought there was an arrow that pointed to where the property was. I'm so sorry. Is it a little bit down? There we go. Okay. So, the one that is in pink here is for professional administrative services, and the one that's in yellow is a multi-unit fourplex or less. Let's scroll down a little bit more here. And this is, so the field of grass is the site that they're proposing to develop upon. Behind that, you can see the apartment complex, it's zone B multifamily. Across the street, you have a church. And then you have more of the apartment complex. And then this building directly to the north is, that is what's zoned GC General Commercial. So with that, I will stand for questions. Any questions from the dad?
So the screening requirement is that between the apartment complex, or that would be mitigated by
the screening and landscaping, correct?
That is gonna still be,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, how long the property has been vacant?
I believe since 1983.
Would the entrance be on Waco or? No,
I will defer to the applicant to answer that question.
Okay. Gonna be there or am I here? Okay. Lee Mader, I'm currently representing the owner. We will be the owner upon completion of this. We're going to build on it ourselves. Entrance would be, and I don't know how to run the pointer quite as well, but it would be on the northwest portion. There's 4 street trees in there currently, provided by the city. We would be north of that where we didn't interrupt those street trees.
Thank you. Any other questions for?
While I'm here, yeah.
More questions? Any questions from the public?
We make a motion to approve for planning's recommendation.
Second,
yeah, second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to the next one. Zoning case 2023-0076. All right. So the applicant for this case is requesting a zone change from neighborhood retail and B multifamily. There's a little sliver of B multifamily on this property to limited commercial to allow for commercial development. This is about ½ an acre in size, and it's on the southwest corner of West 13th Street North and North Waco Avenue. It's currently developed, I believe, with a youth center and insurance office. I got that right? Okay, great. And then the building on site was constructed around 1920. So they are, with this zone change, they are requesting more uses permitted on site. There's also some changes to minimum lot area, minimum lot width, the setbacks, maximum height, et cetera, that is listed in your staff report. And then again, because this property abuts residential zoning, it will need to provide screening and landscaping. So there are no zoning cases associated with this property. Let's take a look at some of the plans and policies that it conforms by. So the requested zone change is in conformance with the community investments plan because the Wichita Future Growth Concept Map identifies this site as appropriate for commercial uses. So it is not in conformance with the Midtown Neighborhood Plan. As I mentioned with the previous case, plan emphasizes commercial development near 13th and Broadway, but Broadway is the commercial corridor. And then the Midtown Neighborhood Plan's future land use map identifies the subject site as primarily appropriate for neighborhood retail uses. Now it's already zoned retail. So deviating from that requested zone change for higher intensity uses will deviate also from the use. So based upon the information available from planning staff recommends that this request be denied. And, it's based on rules. I have only received one phone call from a concerned neighbor who was just curious about the development application. So, you guys are the first people to hear this case. So should the DAB or the MAPC find the zone change request be approved, we concocted up a protective overlay that would be implemented on this property. And this is to restrict some uses that we feel do not conform to the Midtown neighborhood plan. So the following uses, so it would be limited commercial, but the following uses are prohibited on site. So correctional placement residence, hotel or motel, pawn shop, service station, and vehicle repair limited. Now, I did have a conversation with the agent for the applicant, and my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to allow for commercial development and to make this more marketable. We spoke about, what we might include in that protective overlay, or what if there was any proposed uses that they might have on site. And we spoke about the idea of having a drive-through at that intersection. So, if there is to be a drive-through, then they must be placed on the north side of the property. So let's go to some of the photos here. So this is the intersection. This is the zoning here. And I will say full disclosure, everything that is in red is zoned limited commercial. This is the future growth concept map. This is the future land use concept map that was put together for the Midtown neighborhood plan. And here are some photos of the current subject site. And with that, I will stand for questions. Yes.
Do we know if they're removing the existing structure?
I don't have that information.
Yeah, so. The trouble with the Midtown plan, as much of as it does on this. Current projection plan was developed in the, what do you call it, the community investments plan, that was 2015, and then Places for People is 2019. So we're conforming with the two later documents mostly. It's the 20-year-old one that we're not conforming. So it seems a little curious that this is recommended for denial based on that. So can you speak to that a little bit more?
Sorry, you threw me a tough question here. But
All three other corners.
All three other quarters are LC.
yes. And this was a departmental decision to recommend denial, and, our line of thinking was, based on the Midtown neighborhood plan, that it is appropriate for neighborhood retail. We just don't see how the additional, more intense uses would be appropriate for that site.
It used to be a picture in the grocery store recently.
So we're keeping one.
So that's the other thing. I feel like that there-
And then we'll take it out to the public.
It seems to me though that there's this perception that 13.
Used to have the soda jerk.
One person at a time, please.
I'm trying to hear a question.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, so I guess my point is 13 has high usage, period. So I just feel like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me that you want to limit the high usage on on all but one corner. Or limited on one corner, not all four. So, and if we're trying to push that towards 13th and Broadway, it seems a little incongruous to me.
Okay.
And it feels like an unfair application of an old document that hasn't been updated.
Thank you.
So.
As you said, there's a possibility of a drive-through. Does it look at what the goal of this
rezoning will be?
I can have the agent, do you want to speak on that?
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, you go ahead. I don't want to take the words out of your mouth.
Thank you. Kim Edgington representing the action on this. I appreciate the comments that you've made because those were kind of the thoughts in our mind as we made application is that this is an intersection that is historically very commercial in nature. That the other three corners are apparently appropriate for limited commercial uses. And that there really shouldn't be any reason that this corner isn't also appropriate for commercial uses. And that the neighborhood retail district is a fairly limited zoning, very limited in terms of uses and size of uses. So while we don't have an exact use on this property, the limitations of the neighborhood retail zoning are proving difficult in marketing and figuring out how to redevelop this property. For instance, drive-throughs are prohibited in neighborhood retail. Restaurants over 2,000 square feet, which is a fairly small footprint, are not prohibited or not allowed in neighborhood retail. So we have developed a protected overlay proposal, and I'm gonna just start one here, and if you wouldn't mind passing it down. We are proposing excluding quite a number of uses that, you know, may definitely not be appropriate in this location. But that would still allow a number of uses that are going to be similar to what's going on at other corners. And this would offer an opportunity for the redevelopment of this intersection, potentially increase the property value of this property, bring in additional sales tax revenues through new businesses. So, and there would also, if the existing building does end up being taken down, which could very well happen, that's going to trigger some additional building setbacks. Right now, that building is right on the property line, where that could significantly improve, say, the traffic safety at this location, because that building would then be required to be set back from the street. It would trigger additional landscaping requirements, parking lot screening. So what you could end up with is aesthetically something much better than what is there now, that we can't do under the limited neighborhood retail zoning right now.
Kim, would you read this list for the?
I would be glad to.
Just so they're on the same page.
Thank you. The following uses are to be prohibited on the site. Cemetery, correction, which that's just not an appropriate use. Correctional placement residence, whether it's limited or general in scope, just completely prohibited. A hotel or motel, a service station, a car wash, vehicle and equipment sales, entertainment establishment, nightclub, and tavern or drinking establishment we are voluntarily requesting that all of those uses be permitted, along with the request. Prohibited, I'm sorry. It's been a very long day. They would be prohibited. And then we also agree with Christina's recommendation that drive-through speakers, if there are any, would be on the north portion of the property, away from any of the residential. There's going to be significant screening requirements where we are adjacent to the residential, so those will also be triggered by any redevelopment of the property where we would have to screen from adjacent residential. But overall, we just feel like this is an opportunity to improve this intersection, hopefully be a catalyst for some additional reinvestment in this area. We feel like it's kind of a diamond in the rough piece of property, with a great deal of potential because of the, you know, the traffic counts are there. You've got the school right there, you know, if there were to be, you know, a food establishment, drinks, those things are going to really be an attractive, yeah, they're gonna attract students there. Give them something within walking distance, where right now, for the high schoolers, there's really not much available to them to access. You know, they can't go get a cup of coffee, there's just not much there. So this would really provide an opportunity for that. So we kind of in conclude, I'll take any questions, or I can go ahead and conclude whatever you would prefer me to do.
Does Dad have any questions first?
Yes. There's both the vehicle and equipment repair and pawn shop are not in your list. Would
The
you be
reason-
resistive to that?
Well, the reason we left vehicle and equipment repair was you may see them popping up, and that this could be a potential location for they're called Take Fives. It's a drive-through, 5-minute oil change that technically falls under the definition of vehicle repair. So that was one use. And pawn shops, we asked for secondhand stores, and we don't want to get tied up into a legal definition where if there's any kind of trading of equipment, that could put us potentially out of compliance. Because right now,
We are out of compliance.
technically, right now, the property use itself is out of compliance with the zoning. A teen center, by definition, which is what is in that building, is not allowed in neighborhood retail zoning. So not only does this kind of help us with potentially redeveloping the property, it's bringing the current use in compliance with the unified zoning code as well.
I get the question and correct me if I'm wrong on the exact wording of this, but when the end product is perhaps more in flux, I've seen in the past that there's been restrictions on financial institutions, mostly for, yeah, exactly. Is that not one that you would be comfortable with being added to that as well?
I think given that this neighborhood and the investment that my client would like to see, that's not a direction necessarily that they want to see happen here.
Grocery store.
We could do pay and then that's what he's.
Yeah, he's asking if we would be willing to exclude that.
See what?
Any other questions for the applicant or agent?
Is that open to the public?
Yeah, just.
Oh, was the question of me or was this?
No, it's a general question.
So, in conclusion, we are respectfully requesting that you consider the overlay that we have proposed to protect from uses that are clearly not appropriate, fairly agreed upon point there, but that will allow for the potential to improve and redevelop this property in a way that is consistent with the uses that are surrounding it.
Any questions from the public? Yes.
A couple of observations. That lot, North High School and the Learning Center is to the northwest, so it's not limited to commercial on all four corners. It's the Advanced Learning Center. for
It's
North
zoned into commercial.
Well, the use is Advanced Learning Center. And the other is, as noted, that's a youth center where they presently want to put what I suspect is a drive-through hamburger stand. So I think that's a negative. The other problem is there is a tremendous amount of traffic through that area, especially during the midday when kids are getting out of school. There's just nonstop. It's a place to be avoided, and adding a drive-through through there that's gonna attract students and whatnot, I think it's gonna be a major congestion. So I would speak against making this change.
It's operating.
No.
Yeah, just kind of a curiosity, do they know that you're gonna redevelop it?
So yeah, we're actually negotiating a lease with them right now, but it's, you know, I don't really want to sign a lease if they're not in compliance and. But yeah, as of right now, there's no actual plan or LOIs or any commitment to the property other than its current use. We do have a pretty decent vacancy. It's probably been there for, I don't know, it's probably it's probably been vacant longer than I've been alive. That, you know, just with the uses, it kind of makes it hard, especially since it's pretty restrictive. And, you know, I'm getting gas where the liquor store is, so it's, you know, in my own nice living in the neighborhood, it's always been a pretty high use area, so, you know, you go into that high school.
It was a burger joint for a while. The Soda Jerk, Don Carson ran it.
That was a restaurant.
Yeah, yeah.
Served breakfast. Probably not. It's been a
Probably
while.
not,
Yeah.
probably not.
Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, speaking as a property owner across the street, 3 houses down, I'm very concerned about the traffic of the proposed. And there is no significant, there is no specific proposed use yet. So even with the suggested use of a protective overlay, what do we have? I mean, Waco has so much traffic, the noise level is incredible now. I can't imagine with the drive-through. What? So I would obviously propose a denial.
And we would certainly offer up that if there is to be a drive-through potentially in the future, that we will work with planning staff and engineering staff to ensure that the layout and the design of any queuing and parking and circulation will meet all city standards in order to ensure that it's a completely safe environment for that kind of business.
Any other questions, or is anybody ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion if I have a sheet of paper. So motion to approve with the protective overlay. Following uses are prohibited on the site: cemetery, correctional placement residence, limited in general, hotel or motel, service station, car wash, vehicle and equipment sales, entertainment establishment, nightclub, tavern, or drinking establishment, vehicles, signage. For as number 1 in the recommendation.
And I'm not sure, maybe out of order, or how do you want me to? We had asked not to include that restriction on the neighborhood retail signage, just due to the fact that the other remaining corners are allotted signage for the limited commercial zone and not the more restrictive neighborhood retail zone, especially if we're looking at, franchise or national type users that have particular signage. If you think about like the signage that Walgreens has, they have a very substantial amount of signage. And we are asking not to be more highly limited than what a commercial use would normally have.
I appreciate that. Well, I respect the perspective of 3 corners. You are also abutting a number of residential properties directly to the south. So the rest of the board thinks that the signage case is compelling to be removed, then they can, no one can second it, or they can vote down the motion.
Or a substitute motion.
Or a substitute motion, even better.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table.
Could you read those restrictions again?
Of course. Buckle in. Cemetery, correctional placement, residence limited in general, hotel or motel, service station, car wash, vehicle and equipment sales, parentheses outdoors, entertainment establishment, nightclub, tavern, or drinking establishment, vehicular repair, and financial institutions. So the vehicular repair and financial institutions are two added to the document the applicant provided us, based on staff recommendations and that we don't want to pay a loan in person or business on that corner.
Is there better verbiage for?
Can we just confirm that financial institution wouldn't include a standard bank?
Does, and they would request a variance, go back to the city if they have a bank.
Well, a bank is already allowed under the neighborhood retail, so I guess we're kind of getting into, yeah.
I think your main concern is.
Okay.
And then in the event that I buy a bank and they come back to us and say, hey, we want to put a bank here, and then that gets changed, but we are preempting a less savory financial actor from being.
A second.
All in favor of the motion on the table?
Yeah, so I'm a little concerned about this financial institution. Have, if they get a bank, one of the bank and have them back through for the exception. Is there not another way to limit this to keep title loan and pawn shops out? There isn't. Okay, answers my question.
What is the difference in the signage? Like, how limited is the neighborhood residential signage compared to limiting commercial?
You're just throwing me all these good questions. Yeah, you could probably answer that, because you're.
Typically your limited commercial signage is gonna be based on your amount of frontage, where you have a 1-to-1 ratio up to 150 square feet. So that's what the sign that Walgreens has is about 150 square feet because they have enough frontage to warrant that. Neighborhood retail zoning is going to limit you to 48 square feet, which is a pretty small sign when you look at national type users and, you know, chains, things like that. That's not going to typically meet kind of some of their checklist items where they would have signage.
Are there restrictions in code right now under this proposed use or under it not? Proposed code, that prevents signage that would face residential?
There is, like, we couldn't have building signage that would be facing the residential. So that's already built into the sign code. So it would protect the neighborhood, the residents to the south.
But if you would like, you can add to the protective overlay to say, you know, signage shall not be directed towards residential properties as defined in the sign code, if you just wanna solidify it.
Or, you know, if you're considering substitute motion where you don't have the NR signage restriction, you could still add that no signage can be adjacent, you know, on building adjacent to residential. So.
Yeah, I'm curious what your concern about this is.
Mostly that, I'm just looking at the corner, like, again,
Yeah.
without knowing the final plans, and not to say this is the shining example, but the liquor store does not have a giant light sign up there. Walgreens does, so it's just a matter of what the end result might be, which we can only plan for and stuff.
I mean, there's just a different.
I have a motion and a second.
I would like to make I'd like to substitute. Can we do that at this point, or is it too late? Yeah, I'd like to take out the signage restriction for NR.
And add the non-adjacent. I'm sure.
Yeah, we can, sure. The residential facing stuff.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor of
are we voting on? So that,
We're voting on.
The substitute
Right,
motion.
substitute motion, yeah. So we have a substitute motion and a second. So it's basically everything that he said minus the sign restriction.
With the.
With the addition.
Addition.
Points at potential.
Everybody got all that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah. Everybody understand that? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our last item. City ordinance regarding local campaign contributions. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry you
There's-
had to be so patient.
Yeah, tonight, so.
Look, if we look at all.
And Jennifer, the green button, that's a pointer.
Yeah.
The green, this one, that's the pointer, and then you just put that one.
That's part of the environmental.
No. It was, a hamburger. Don Carson.
Thank you for your help.
Guys, wait a minute.
Jennifer McGuire, City Law Department. We're just here tonight to talk to you and get feedback at the council's direction about whether the city should amend its campaign finance ordinance. And the question is, and it came to council last on January 16th. The question is whether LLCs and corporations should be prohibited from making contributions to candidates in city elections or be allowed to make contributions in city elections, subject to a disclosure requirement. So by way of history, on January 16th, council considered this issue and voted to send it back to Debs for evaluation input. Oh, that's weird. Why is it skewed?
I'll just forward it for you, Jennifer.
There it is. So generally, campaign finance is an area that's regulated primarily by state law. The city does have an ordinance, it's always had an ordinance on campaign finance regulation. From 2015 to January 2nd, the city did not, the city followed state law. The city had the same rules as state law, allowing $500 contributions by one city entity or person per candidate for primary and primary for general. On January 2nd, we also had a requirement that you have to file financial report at the city clerk level. That's in addition. On January 2nd, we amended the city org code was amended to prohibit campaign contributions on city elections only from corporations and LLCs. That is what the current code is now. There was a technical correction too to make the penalties for misdemeanor consistent with state law. We do need to be consistent. Cities can be stricter, more restrictive than state law. We cannot be less restrictive. And that was just to tidy up a language thing on the definition of misdemeanor. Okay, so on January 16th, this item came back to council and the discussion was to repeal the section on LLCs and corporate donations. And in that discussion, there was well, what about repealing that, excuse me, but also make contributions subject to disclosure by the candidate in a report of who is in that LLC as a managing partner or a responsible officer for that contribution. And so that was the discussion. That's the discussion here before you tonight. We were asked to bring this back to council for the May 5th council meeting. And we were taking it out to Debs. And so that is the question. I'm available for questions, but it's up to turn it over to you for discussion and feedback.
Questions or comments from the dad?
I guess I'm confused. Maybe I'm the only one in the room. Is the issue here the potential for a candidate that's in the running for the city office might be the owner or an officer or an LLC?
No.
What is it?
It's about the contributions issue of, who makes contributions? Should the city restrict contributions in city races?
I suppose my question is more, does this, if LLC, the January 2nd law is overturned, LLCs are allowed to contribute. Say I've got $5,000 sitting around that I want to give to the city races, but I can only, I as an individual, can only give 500 per candidate. But then I want to make an LLC, and then in my LLC give 500. So it's a matter of circumventing the spending caps.
That's what the state law is right now, just so, yeah, that's what the state law allows.
The state law allows the double dipping, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yes.
Okay.
And this would not, either way, would not affect, the restriction does not affect, business partnerships or, sole proprietorships or professional associations.
Or
Those, or PACs, which are still no.
Other questions or comments from the DAB before we go to the public?
So, I have one more question. I want to make sure I understand this. So an LLC can't contribute at all, regardless of whether a member of that LLC has already contributed. This restricts LLCs from not contributing.
January 6th, January 2nd, that action, that restricted contribution by LLCs and corporations. Then
And so
January
that's in line with state law or just the city?
That was just the cities being more restrictive than state law. January 16th, the proposal was to go back to state law, but require a reporting requirement or disclosure requirement. So that's the discussion.
I'm curious, without naming names,
So some people are maxing out that if they own 20 different businesses, they're giving $500 from all 20 businesses from the same person.
and we have evidence.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so I see this, state filings required that the ownership of. If you're probably your franchise reports, or whatever, you've got to, if you have 5% or more ownership of an entity, you have to disclose that on filing, and it's public. So I'm not sure why we would allow people to hide behind the entity shell. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's gonna be, if they're gonna be able to donate through the corporate structure, I think you gotta go this far. At least.
It's also time just for the DAB to offer a general feedback on this.
Up to you, how you want to handle discussion.
Okay, I mean, it's. Personally, I feel that this is closing a loophole that allows folks who have more money, by one way or another in their life, to exert more influence than, say, the general individual. Now, question of if that's their free speech, that's for the Supreme Court to decide, but that doesn't mean it isn't bullshit.
Right, like, if you're gonna do that, I wanna know you're doing it.
Right, and in a more responsive way than filings, quarterly filings that are done by the candidates and those annual state filings through the Secretary of State office. It's repealing this seems to just benefit only a few folks that can even consider giving more than $500 to a city elections. Because I certainly don't have that money.
Any other comments?
Where did this come from, the repeal? How did we get, I mean, is this okay to ask that question, like, how did we get to this conversation?
At the very first meeting of the new council, this was brought up to discuss again.
By some of the new elected members?
Yeah, I don't really have any appetite for it, so.
Any comments from the public?
Yeah, I do. I walked up here, I'm tired, I'm gonna do it, okay? I'm Bill Anderson, yeah. I gave you all on a thin sheet of paper, part of an opinion piece that, Dion Leffler wrote. And Dion was instrumental in getting at least this, he said he met with, I always laugh when I said the damn thing. He met with the commissioner Dalton's last talk. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. Okay. And in the discussion, the subject of LLCs and transparency was really important. Glasscock it had a history of being screwed by people, hiding behind an LLC. They tried to tell some crap that they did on him. That's elections like that. So Diane, who I really respect, he writes good stuff. After discussing with that city councilor, and writing an article, this is what he suggested. For LLCs, I'd suggest they be required to disclose members who own more than 5% of the company. That would likely make the ordinance legally bulletproof. We're talking about transparency.
Sorry if you're over the
Yeah.
descriptions. Would the LLCs be disclosing members to the city or to the public?
It would be the transparency, so we could see it. So, I mean, right, you can get donors list, people wanna know who's contributing. When I contribute to Mary, that's public.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how that is. That would likely make the ordinance legally bulletproof because it's the exact same information they already have to give to the Secretary of State. A representative from a political contributing businesses should suffice for publicly traded corporations owned by stockholders. But letting LLCs use a representative, they're like they're saying, as their campaign face could be too big of a loophole. The actual contributors could hide behind an obscure employee or even an outside firm acting as their registered agent. That was the major hurdle in untangling the Capps O'Donnell Clendenin conspiracy against Mr. Glasscock. But if it's done right and is supported by the remaining members of the old council who voted to ban business contributions, Brandon Johnson, Mike Hoheisel, and Maggie Ballard, it's a done deal. So that's my recommendation for your consideration. It makes sense. The guy's smart. He does his research.
Hi, Sherry Skillwoman from Riverside, and I used to live in Humboldt County in California. This was a real big issue that came up for us back in the, I guess it must have been slightly after 2000, because anyway, there was a hostile takeover of a local giant family-owned timber company. And then a new DA came in that was not old school and didn't like the takeover that had happened and brought them up on some fraud charges. And so Maxam, which was the hostile takeover corporation, they went after the DA who was charging them with fraud. And they pumped $250,000 or more, $350,000, I think it was, into the local economy. They didn't even live in Humboldt County. My three concerns with a democracy and having a democratic vote are one person, one vote, but that person is a local person for whatever the entity is that's being voted on. It's not somebody from Texas coming here. And then the transparency issue, which already got mentioned. And I'm a little unclear from the questioning that came up initially. If there are people on DAB who do not realize there was something in the nature of $600,000 pumped in for one candidate on the city council.
The mayor.
Oh, mayor, I'm sorry. Okay, there was a mayor. At any rate, so that's kind of how the issue came up. And then the old outgoing people tried to address that concern. And then the incoming people tried to go.
Or trying.
So any rate, that's, so obviously and also when I was digging to try to find something that I could hand out as any documentations or anything, strangely to me, I'm not legal, but I found this deal from the Federal Election Commission that said Citizens United ruling. It addressed certain kinds of things and gave corporations personhood, et cetera, et cetera. But then it said that it did not ban, it did not address the campaign money. And I thought, well, anyway, that was a surprise to me. And so, and then of course, we also have some federal stuff that's going on right now with the disclosed law. So anyway, but trying to keep it local, those are my concerns anyway, is transparency, the cap on the amounts, and then the fact that it needs to be a person who is part of the legal entity of the group that's being voted, it's acting, having an election. So that somebody from Texas cannot come in and donate $1 million to your campaign or something and get their boy elected or girl.
Just a quick comment. I'm Darrell Duskin. Basically, whenever you're allowing corporations to give unlimited amount of money, you're just legalizing bribery. Is what we're doing. We can see that with our the most recent mayoral race, that basically our candidate was purchased. We had no say who was gonna get voted in because money signs and money was just pouring in from one particular candidate. And all the other candidates had no chance. You know, I don't know how many calls to my house. Hey, and it was and disguised as a survey, basically it's just saying, vote for our candidate with this candidate. So I would say anytime you can limit the amount that a corporation or a LLC that can contribute, we need to do that. Because otherwise we just end up with the corporations owning our votes. We have no say in anything. It's just the corporation saying, this is what we're gonna do. Here's the law we want written. Where does it stop?
I have one further thing, which is at the city council meeting on the 16th, there were businesses present who appealed to say, well, you know, if they're going to be affected by different things with the city council, that they should be allowed to do their independent donation in addition to their individual donation. And it seems to me that the same appeal, if you're going to start going into that territory, the same appeal could be said of the nonprofits. If they're going to be impacted by various things, they should get to have an independent donation under their nonprofit too. But I didn't hear that discussed at all at the meeting.
The wealthy in Wichita run this town. They have bought it.
We'll talk afterwards, but you don't make it pretty.
You see on top, just in case people are not clear. After 2015, they allowed LLCs to contribute $500. That doesn't sound too bad, except what happens that maybe somebody in here doesn't know is these developers, they form an LLC for every one of their projects. And one of the reasons they do it is if one of them goes bad, it doesn't take him completely out. So that's why they do it. But what I'm opposed to, and it's nothing to do with Maggie, it's way before her, is for somebody to have 20 LLCs and just sit down and start writing $500 checks. Because the amount of money that he's spending for some of the projects that go on around town, this is nothing. This is a night out. So I'm opposed to that and it sounds good what Dalton was talking about and what Diane was talking about.
They don't have the votes.
But you could have, your dog could be the representative. You could write down your dog's name in. And even before that, I'm not gonna mention any names because I can't quite remember what happened. But there is a company in town that's still here that even before this had not everyone, but I'll just use like 12 or 20 employees write checks to the person that they wanted to get in there. And he reimbursed them. I know that's against the law, but I know it happened. So, and now this is gonna open up, if they keep it the way it is right now, there'll be some PACs formed and they're limitless. So it could actually get worse. But it might take a while. So if you read Dark Money, you'll see they'll figure out a way around it. We all know that money is influence. If I give more money, and I get access to you, then I can go the way I want you to go. So
I'm in favor of your original motion, what you guys tried to do, okay? But you don't have the votes for anything. You don't have the votes to do that. You know that. You were out there. But this is doable. This is doable
and that may be.
with Diane is right. It'll be hard for Glasscock to go, well, no, I don't wanna do that. That makes sense. That's the only reason I proposed it, not because I think that's the best solution. The best solution is.
Yeah, and you're right. It might actually.
Shut up. Thank you very much for listening to some old man screaming.
Well, is there any way PACs can be prohibited? Because I thought like American Prosperity, their PACs,
I don't think we can do that though. We really have little authority to regulate tax.
but it's just flat out wrong. For like what Doug said, somebody has 20 LLCs and be able to donate $500 for each LLC before the primary and after the primary. And you have a candidate for mayor that raises 5 to 6 times more than any other candidate for mayor did. We should be local. The mayor should be elected by local people and not by money. And to me, they picked somebody that was a face on TV for X number of years. And she's pretty and she's engaged to a developer. One reason I voted for Maggie was because I started a previous council member voting for the developers all the time and not for the common people. I want my streets taken care of. I want safe water. I don't give a rat's ass about that baseball stadium. And that was all done behind closed doors, so much of it. And I'm sick of the wealthy running this town. Charles Koch, George Laham. There's any number of names. When you get the Metro Chamber of Commerce behind, they don't represent you and me. They don't even represent small business owners. I just feel like we should, we've got to do something to take back Wichita for the common citizens. And I don't know what it's going to take. I'm getting old, but I am so sick and tired of the wealthy. Charles Koch owns WSU, and so many things. It's just like he almost, or the Kochs almost privately funded the No campaign on the 1 cent sales tax, which included for transit, for the water, transit, the water, fixing streets, but the thing he was opposed to was the $40 million for business development. And you saw those signs, I mean, if you've been here very long, you saw all those signs all around town, and they got defeated. And we needed those other three things. But I mean, I'm sorry, I'm sounding off, but I'm sick and tired, and I'm not even native to Wichita, but I've been here a long time.
Any other comments for Jennifer before we wrap up this meeting? Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone have any updates for the creator of the group?
The green portal across the cap that I got mine, at least in Indian Health River Bend, I think it's polling places now on our site. So make sure you check your polling place for primaries are coming up here.
Change mine.
Yeah, well, yeah, but of course I had better stuff, but I changed mine from that church up to, back up there, here to Evergreen.
We make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Yeah.
What did you decide on,
You didn't vote.
You didn't vote.
We don't get it. There's
Take a
discussion. No vote.
Oh, man, I could have had one. Oh, man.
Before we adjourn,
You're lucky.
it has come to my attention that a local business that empties septic systems is draining into the sewer system, like a manhole cover on the street. And it's happening several places around the north end here, one in particular. What can be done about that?
We'll talk to you actually.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me.
I just don't know how to address the situation. I'm just not knowledgeable enough. Somebody has dumped like 30 tires in a vacant property in our neighborhood. Do I just do that online?
You can just call me and I'll work on it.
And then someone's selling broken down vehicles. They're all parked on the street. And they disappear quickly within the, 48, 72 hours.
Yes, you can let me know any of that stuff. I'll give you my phone that has my cell phone number on it. Just call me or text me or email me and we'll work on it.
So,
She won't blow you off.
Oh, excellent.
There's a motion on.
Oh, yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?